All right, my friends, my family, and my Justice would call them pop culture comrades. We are here tonight with one of my favorite people on the earth. He is the managing director for CinemaBlend and has the upcoming book, Release the Snyder Cut, the true story behind the fight to save Zack's Justice League. And he did a wonderful job. We've seen a couple clips or a couple snippets from the book so far, and I truly can't wait. The link is in the description so that you can order yours now. I included the Amazon one because that was the obvious choice. So make sure you get your copy. Let's say hello to Mr. Sean O'Connell. I'll move myself to the small spot.
So good to be back on the show. Thank you for having me. Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys.
Oh, of course. And as always, above me, or maybe I thought he was below me, but the one they call Big Drip, below me is producer Jack, and we're all happy to be here, be on the corner. I love your shirt, by the way, Sean. I really do.
Thank you very much. I have an embarrassing number of SnyderCut t-shirts, and this one I believe is from the Project Comic-Con that the kids did. And so yeah, every once in a while I got a lot of black shirts, but every once in a while I'll mix it up with a pop of red. So that's what I chose for this evening.
Awesome. So as you guys know, Justice and myself, we had. Am I breaking up, by the way?
No, you're good now.
You were earlier. But you're good now.
Yeah, I saw it. But as you guys know, we did have Sean on about, well, it was in November for our Snyder Cut expose. We had an awesome time talking to him. So we're gonna try not to ask the same questions. But Jack, I know you have never had the pleasure. So maybe we can start it off with something that you're interested in talking about.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying earlier before we started the show, like it's so weird to see Sean here because I usually see him on my big TV. Let me ask you this: when did you sort of? I mean, obviously the release of Snyder Cut thing started right when it came out. What were your impressions when you go to see Justice League? We had been told, oh, they're just finishing Zack's movie. It's the same movie that Zack wanted to make. We're just kind of filling in what he couldn't finish. What were your thoughts when you're in the theater? It's November, long time coming for the Justice League. Right. What were your thoughts when you finished watching it? Did you immediately notice that things were off, or did it seem fine to you? Or
no, instantly, because, and I've a little bit talked about this in between too. If you are hiring anybody to finish or to continue Zack Snyder's work, you just wouldn't hire Joss Whedon, and that has nothing to do. That's not a slight against Joss Whedon in any way, shape, or form. They just make completely different movies.
Yeah.
And they have completely different voices. So I always found that kind of unusual. And we were having a conversation before the show kicked off about like how on the surface it makes some sense because by that time, not a lot of filmmakers have juggled multiple superhero characters in an ensemble. Joss obviously had done it for the 2 Avengers films. So he'd been battle tested from that sense. So if you were going to try to sell me that, like, we're going to get a guy who's experienced in at least trying to do this, and I'd say, all right, I kind of get it. And also, you knew at that point that they wanted to sort of liven up the mood after BVS, but no one expected it to be that drastic of a shift. And so the minute that you were just a few minutes into the theatrical cut, you were like, oh, this is wrong. Like, it's just wrong. It just feels inauthentic and artificial. And I can't say that it ever really crossed my mind of like, oh, this isn't Zack's work. because I was so overwhelmed with just, this is awful. Like, this is awful. It's like, it's so amateur by every standards that it didn't necessarily matter what Whedon was supposedly continuing. It looked very clear that he was starting over from square one and was just putting together something that didn't work on any level.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind because throughout the summer, I remember coming up, they said, we're just finishing. This is still Zach's movie.
Yeah.
And now, of course, in the years we've learned that at first we thought maybe the Snyder Cut's like 30 minutes of footage, like there was for BVS. Now we're learning, and I can't wait to read your book, that no, this is a completely different movie.
Yeah. Alternate
shots of the same thing. And I guess what caught my attention was like you'd see all these YouTubers doing these comparisons between the scenes that were revealed in the first teaser back during Comic-Con in 2016 and the actual movie. What do you think was the reason for, first of all, just changing it so drastically, not just changing the tone, but the whole movie, and then also keeping it at 2 hours? Because at first my thoughts were like, maybe if they filled in maybe another half hour of story, it might have worked. Did you ever hear anything as to why that 2 hour limit? And
it's a really great question because I've never heard anybody really comment on the 2 hour mandate, like why that needed to hit that mark. And the only thing I can think of is just, that theaters and studios prefer a 90-minute to 2 hour movie.
Yeah.
The number of times that they can run it.
Yeah.
And if you go much longer than that, it cuts into the number of showtimes you can have in a day.
Yeah.
So you have to step back and sort of realize that almost every decision made from the studio side is always going to be driven by money. The mandate is constantly going to be box office and how can we turn profit on this. Mm-hmm. So when you tell me that they were putting a hard and fast 2 hour runtime on the theatrical cut of Justice League, they weren't going to get that from Zach. Zach was clearly going to have his longer version, and he has joked repeatedly that he doesn't make short movies. All of his films are long, and he would even prefer to have an extended cut to any of his stuff.
Yeah.
But with Whedon, whether they told him from the get-go when they hired him it's going to be a 2 hour film, I'm not quite sure. Or if he was just more amenable to saying, like, sure, I can land this in 2 hours.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about on the CinemaBlend videos all the time is just how much we're looking forward to these scenes involving these characters having the room to breathe, having the ability to play themselves out at a pace where we're not just on a sprint, to get through as much choppiness as we can in order to finish the movie. Like at 4 hours, there's a danger that it's going to have too much room to breathe almost.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it needs to have that time to sort of unravel and develop.
And we also have to remember that this is pre-Endgame. Endgame was a 3 hour movie, but I think there was enough faith from the studios that, even if it's 3 hours, people are going to see it again and again. But I think would the Snyder Cut be the longest comic book movie ever made, I'm guessing?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's longer than the Watchmen Ultimate Cut and everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, Sean, you had put out a tweet today that caught my attention.
Okay.
And recently, there's been a lot going around about how the Snyder Cut is a toxic fan base. I don't want to spend too much time on the people that shed or try to shed a negative light on this whole thing.
Right.
But you had mentioned that how you interviewed Zach for the novel. And could you just tell us what he said to you in regards to that? I don't have the exact tweet, but the way you put it, it really rang bells to me. And it was just like, there it is.
Yeah. And you have to remember that Zach and I spoke for the book back in June of 2020. So this was very shortly after he got to announce that the cut was coming, but not in the context of everything that's happened essentially since June of 2020, right? Where he's had plenty of time to work on it. And the quote unquote discourse around the movie has changed multiple times.
Yeah.
But when he and I spoke, there was an initial reaction from the media that HBO Max releasing the Snyder Cut was they were bending to the will of the quote unquote toxic Snyder Cut fandom that spent 3 years badgering them and demanding that the Snyder Cut be released. And so I asked Zach, in his opinion, what is his reaction to this dismissal of his fans? That like it's a win for toxic fandom. And we talked a bit about how his fan base, in relation to other fan bases, Star Wars,
Star Trek,
Trek being another one. I feel like there's another really good one that's volatile or prone to argument. And Zach was very quick to say, like, he said, in a nutshell, I'm gonna have to paraphrase because I don't have his quote in front of me, but like, I know the people who are behind that narrative, without naming people, he was saying. And I know the people who have gone on record to say things about my films or my community. And he has the ability, more than anybody that you would assume, to go at them with facts and say, like, what you're saying is completely wrong, because here's the actual story. There is this entire cottage industry of which, you're a part of, I'm a part of, that we all exist because we comment on the film industry, and it's very easy for the people who are the creators in the industry, of which we're all commenting, to come down to our level and say, no, this is actually what's happening. Zach, for his part, stays on the high road above it all and doesn't address it directly. In this moment of he and I having this conversation, he was saying, if I had the ability, even though I've been told by people in the room to not do this, I could go to these people who are spreading misinformation and say, here's why you're wrong, essentially. And it's interesting because, I'm going through a little bit of that myself nowadays. And I'm not trying to
I see it.
I see it all the time.
And I'm not trying to compare myself to Zach on any way, shape, or form. But here's what I'll say. It is, I understand exactly what he's saying, that when you see something false said, and the fact that you could very easily just swoop in and say, well, you're wrong because this, it's more beneficial to just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more beneficial to just leave it alone because you know the truth.
Yeah.
And eventually the truth is gonna come around. And so I hear things that are said about me or the book that when I hear them, I just think like, well, I just know that that's false.
Right.
And you can't control how people feel. So I can only imagine Zach magnified by,
a million. Yeah.
Hearing just an endless barrage of critique and commentary. And if he stopped and addressed every single one of them, that's what it is. I realized very early on that if I stopped and addressed every single one of them, I would do nothing else with my day.
Yeah.
And you'd be giving them attention.
Which is all they want.
Yeah.
And if he stopped and addressed every single one of them, he would be doing nothing else with his day, and he's far too busy for that. So I understand that.
What makes me laugh all the time, and this has nothing to do with any of us, but now that you mention that, it makes me laugh almost every single time when someone will screenshot, and it will be like, typically it's a foreign person, but they ask Zach the same question 305 times in a row.
Right.
And he's just like, stop! Like, what are you doing? Like, is it like, will Charlie Hunnam be Green Arrow?
Right.
Will Charlie Hunnam be? And oh my, like, if you're right though, like, if you ask, and listen, none of us here feel that way about you.
Yeah.
None of us here would ever think to say something like that to Zach or to you or to anyone else. That the way I see it is, and the way I've always seen it, and I told you last time, is whether you've been a fan for 5 minutes, 1 year, or the whole time,
Right.
as long as you have the purest of intentions, that doesn't make you any less or any more. And the Snyder Cut family does have that one issue where the people that do think that there's like hierarchy to it,
Right.
they do. It's a problem. And I think that's only natural, is like jealousy and stuff.
But in the back of my mind, guys, I always knew, and I still feel this way, I just believe the book stands on its own. Like, I have faith and confidence in the book that if and when people check it out, that they're going to understand where I was coming from.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the fandom. You've met Zach a couple of times. You talked to him. You have a kind of a relationship with him. What is it about him as a director that on one hand, it's brought out the best in fans, but I've seen this both in fans that don't like him and critics, what they call the professional critics, right? That they automatically are absolutely negative about the guy.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, you know what, I don't like his movies, I'll check it out maybe. They're like, this movie's going to suck. Like, automatically, they bring out this vitriol. They say awful things about his family. I'm like, whoa. Because we don't necessarily hear that about who directed Iron Man 3. I think it was Shane Black. Yeah. You don't hear people say, man, Shane Black ruined Iron Man. This guy's... They just move on.
Yeah.
Move on with their lives. But there's something about him they don't like. I never understood that. Even if you don't like the filmmaker, you just move on with your life. But...
And I honestly don't get it either. Yeah. And it's absolutely, in my opinion, one of the reasons why we are still talking about Justice League to this day.
Yeah.
I always say that, like, whatever movie was in the crosshairs on the DC calendar when they decided to make their tonal shift from the more serious Zack Snyder version to the lighter Marvel version, that movie was going to get effed completely, right? And it could have been Shazam, and it could have been Wonder Woman, it might have been Aquaman, but whatever one was in production at that time was going to get messed with by the studio. It just happened to be Justice League because, and Zack's fan base is so passionate about him, and they are so enamored with his vision, and they will hold the line for him that, like, if it was, let's just hypothetically say that it was Shazam that was in post-production when they decided to change gears and replace the director. Like, with all due respect to David Sandberg, who is a very nice man, I don't think David Sandberg's fans 3 years later would still be demanding, let me see his version of Shazam. They would have just rolled with the punch and said, like, all right, I guess this is a Shazam movie that we got. Snyder's fans are so passionate, you know, and I don't think Warner Brothers counted on that. I don't think that they anticipated the amount of heat that they would continue to get 3 years later. But why is it? People connect with his art. The entire back half of the book is truly just made up of messages from Zack's fans, where in the moment, because I didn't know what the ending of the book was going to be, I gave his fans an opportunity to send him a message and saying, on the off chance that one day Zack picks this book up, what is the message that you would like to get to him? And I was overwhelmed with messages from people who, you know, global fans who wanted to express their passion for Zack and talk to him about how much he means to them as a filmmaker, how much his movies have affected them, how much their love for DC characters and the way that he has interpreted them has connected with them. It's just, there's no denying the way that his art speaks to people.
Right. And I mean, last time you were here, you had said that was an amazing story when you told us the first time. And I thought that was such a cool way, because we had asked you, how are you going to end this book? Like, how is it going to end? Because, you know, the story's written. And when you said that, I was like, wow, there's no better ending for a story like that than to include the people that also made it possible. Sure. And I think that was such a good idea.
Well, honestly, like, without the fans, without the people in the movement, we wouldn't be where we are right now in terms of this movie coming out in March. And I certainly wouldn't have a book. I wouldn't have a book. You know, there wouldn't be anything. I would have half of a story. The other half, the beating heart of this book is the people in the movement. And unless they, which is really, like, I get told, I need to stay off social media. I get told all the time on social media that I'm manipulating the movement. Yeah. When, like, this story, I couldn't tell this story if the movement didn't turn around and give me their story themselves. Like, I'm just the vessel, you know, like, I'm literally just conveying people in the movement's story. So I have no clue how I'm manipulating them. I'm just giving them a platform. So,
can I tell you what I think that is? It goes back to what you were saying, that Snyder fans are so passionate, and they've been involved with this, let's say, at least, you know, 2017.
Right.
That when they see someone else, they're like, no, I know more than that guy. You know, I've been following this every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I named my first child Zack Snyder. You know, like they get so into it. They're like, how dare this person, you know? And it's like, then don't buy the book. You know, like I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean? Like, but like to them, it's like, I guess it's like, it kind of reminds when you were in high school and you liked a band that no one else liked. And all of a sudden everyone's talking about that band. You're like, hey, I was listening to them when you weren't. You know, I think that's what it is. It's just
I did like Nirvana before Nevermind, by the way.
Ooh.
They were on MTV. I was like, what are they doing on MTV?
You know, we're talking about the internet here, right? Especially a big part of this movement was through Twitter and the fan base on Twitter. And we have a thing called trolls on the internet, right? So these are people that just come in to stir up the pot simply for stirring up the pot, right? Just because they like to see a reaction out of people. And that's simply what it is. Because in no way, shape, or form is this manipulation. Like you said, you're a vessel. You're telling the story and you're giving them a platform for that story to be heard by people who aren't spend all day on, you know, on Twitter or on the internet or wherever the case may be.
Here's the part. This is the only part that annoys me about it. And then we can move on if you want to, because I don't want to dwell too much on the negativity of it. But this period right now should be nothing but a victory lap.
That's right. That's right. That's
an
right.
hourly parade of people just bringing up all the reasons why they are thrilled.
Yeah.
That, you know, on March 18th, you're going to get to see this movie that you fought so hard for. And instead, I think having observed the movement for the better part of, 2 years now at this point, I think they're more divided than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And I can't wrap my brain around that at all, because the only thing I can think of is that you cross the finish line. Select people in the movement have crossed the finish line and don't know who to fight next. Yeah. They had a victim, they had a target that they could go after, and now that victim isn't there anymore. So they're looking for something else to fill that void. Because I truly believe in my heart that this should be the back patting time. Like, look what we did. They should have a year to two to simply celebrate the unprecedented thing that you've accomplished.
Right, and
that's right.
It goes, and I say this with the as a way to transition, because I do have plenty of questions about your actual time spent working on this book, because I don't think you wrote it for yourself, right? I think you wrote this for every single person that put their sweat, their tears, their ambitions, their money. I think you wrote it for them.
Thank you for saying that, because I honestly, that was my intention.
Yeah, and for them to not see it, it's a little frustrating, because I know, right? I know I see it, and I know maybe you haven't always liked Zach's films like I have, but you've come around, you've watched it in a different light,
right? And
you've seen what you needed to see in it, and that's all we can ask, right? So when podcasters and YouTubers are also feeding into it, they maybe, their whole show was the DC side of things.
Yeah.
And they create problems to create viewers. And then, there's a lot of that going around too. So I think we all need to take a piece of advice from Sean and to do the victory lap, to enjoy this time, because we are only going to live through this once.
Yeah.
Enjoy it now.
So true.
Enjoy it now.
Yeah.
So
I say it on a regular basis. Where this is the golden age of a nerd, right? Nerds are winning. I don't care if you like the movies, if you dislike the movies. As a nerd, we're winning. So I'm happy.
Yep. So true. Amen.
You know what I think it is sometimes with fans? When you fight so damn long, you forget what it's like not to fight.
Yeah.
And I think you see that every day in the comment section, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Like, they've been fighting so long, they can't just. And even I was telling this to Ty, when they did the release date, we did a morning show, and we just kept saying it felt surreal. Like, obviously, we knew it was coming, but the fact that it happened, that yes, there's a release date, it's happening, it still seems almost like, like it's not real, even though it is. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You wait for something for so long, and now it's here.
I hear you.
You've done a lot for Justice as well. Some of the advice that you gave Justice the first time that we spoke to you was that he's not an aspiring writer, that he is a writer. And since then, I can't tell you the amount of times that he's written something or tried to put an article out of his own.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
Right.
you've done a lot. You've done if you don't hear one positive thing in the next 12 hours, there it is. You've done something good for someone here.
Hey
and
man,
we'll
I
always
didn't do
appreciate
anything.
that.
I didn't do anything. Justice just realized his potential. That's all. That's all it happened.
Spoken like a true hero, Sean.
He just knows that I believe in him. That's all he needs to know.
Of course.
Oh, man.
So so to the book. Now, it's now being released March 1st.
Unreal.
That is 17 days before Zack Snyder's Justice League debuts around the globe. If I were to use the cosmic treadmill and come out to you right through your computer and tell you it, if I told you this a year ago, would you believe it? Or 2 years ago, whatever it is.
So no, of course not, because that's ridiculous. And the fact that it's even still happening is ridiculous. However, what I will say is, without sounding too, weirdo metaphysical, like everything about this process has been bizarrely, like kismet is the word for it, kind of thing. Yeah. Like right down to the author's note in the book gets into the fact that I had this idea to write a book about the Snyder Cut. I got approached by a publisher who wanted to see some sample chapters. I took some vacation days from CinemaBlend, specifically solely to focus on writing those chapters for the book, and instead ended up getting invited to a Netflix set visit, and it ended up being for Army of the Dead. And it was legitimately like, I had carved out this time. I'm going to write about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Hey, why don't you instead come to Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead? And here's what's even more strange about that. That to me was the universe tapping me on the shoulder and saying, do this. But here's what's even more strange, and I realized this after the fact. I've never been invited to a Netflix set visit before that. That was the first one I ever got invited to. And I have not been invited to a Netflix set visit since. That is the first and only time that a Netflix movie has invited me to a set.
Wow, that's like, that really is kind of eerie.
So there's too many things like that. And, so when everybody was watching the Man of Steel watch party, there were a lot of people who had invested interest in Zack announcing it at that time. But like here, I had a book that I'd been working on for 18 months, up until that point. And here was the man who I'd been writing about for that amount of time announcing on a feed, like, yes, it's coming. Like I couldn't I couldn't, and I still can't wrap my brain around the fact that these two things have aligned in this way.
Yeah.
And that they're going to arrive 17 days apart. Like it's impossible. You couldn't. Yeah. It's literally like trying to throw a dart at a target moving 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But you did it.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
No. See, that's the thing. I didn't do anything. Like I delivered a book, but somewhere a bigger power was like, yes, and your book is going to arrive at the exact same time.
Yeah. Right.
It's beautiful. It truly is. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they call that phrase divine providence. Like it almost seems like chess pieces are being aligned in a certain way, or dominoes are being aligned so that things fall better than you could have imagined. Because
even heading into this year, like what would stop HBO Max and Zack from saying Thanksgiving weekend? We're going to come out Thanksgiving weekend. Sorry, you guys have to wait this whole year, but that's the best time for it. We need X amount of time to complete the VFX or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I would have been like, okay, great. But my book is coming then and it'll be available. And when we get to the Snyder Cut, great, then people might still want to read it. And instead they're coming out in the exact same month. It's literally impossible.
Yes, really, honestly.
If I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would say the odds on that are like Power going out at the Super Bowl level odds. Like if if you chose that at DraftKings, you're now a billionaire.
Oh, let me ask you guys: are you rooting for Brady or no?
Yes, I love him. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So Justice is actually the only Patriots fan here.
Okay.
I grew up an Oakland Raiders fan against my family's wishes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Also
I was
against my
offered.
wishes.
Yeah, I was offered to come over to the, as they called it, the good side or the light side. When I was like 15, and they were like, "We'll just let you come back, right?" Or not come back because I was never a Patriots fan, but they were like, "We'll ask 0 questions. No one will ever make fun of you." And I was like, "Get out of here, fucking losers!" But
Sorry,
Yeah,
who's your team?
Not to diverge. Sorry, not to diverge.
What do you mean? Who's his team?
My
Oh,
team?
you don't have
I don't
Twitter.
know.
That's why. Yeah, you don't have Twitter.
I'm a big Carolina Panthers fan.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Carolina
Oh, okay. All right.
Huge.
Could you do me a favor and take Cam back, please?
Not after last season, no. Broke my heart when he left, but then I saw him play for you guys, and I was okay.
You know, I think so. All right. Before, because I still have several questions that I'd like to ask. However, you and I spoke about maybe reading a little bit. I think maybe if we could maybe do that now, we'd have a little bit more to talk about on
I would love to
maybe
hear
how
it.
you delivered it, and all that stuff. Just because it would give us a kind of a tone. I've read, by the way, your the little snippet that you released.
Yes, sir.
I've seen it probably 200 times just today. So it's making the rounds, which is really good news. At least during on my Twitter feed, which is not saying a lot that I saw it 200 times, I suppose.
No, it means we all follow the same people, essentially.
Yeah.
So I'll read a couple of pages from chapter 7.
Right.
Chapter 7 is called Change in the Narrative Tide. And it essentially, let's see where it picks up. It picks up after, in this part of by this part of the story, BVS had come out. BVS did not make $1 billion, which I know sounds like insanity, but literally was sort of the gold standard of where superhero movies sort of needed to be at that point in order to be deemed successful. And you could tell that the wheels behind the scenes at Warner Brothers were kind of turning in a different direction. That Warner Brothers was weighing the possibilities from everybody I've spoke to of shifting away from Zack and trying to go after that Marvel tone. And I got some flack from people who maybe read the book, I'm not sure, before they did the review, that I talk about Marvel too much. But I think it's important to really discuss what Marvel was accomplishing at that time. Because outside of Zack and his influence, there were people above him in the executive level who were looking across the street at Marvel Studios and saying, why can't we have that? You know, like we have Superman, we have Batman, we have Wonder Woman. Why are we not doing $1 billion movies also?
Exactly.
And, you know, Marvel is putting out Iron Man 3 and, you know, and they're getting $1 billion. So I'm at this point now where I'm going to read you guys the beginning of Chapter 7, Change the Narrative Tide, and this is when I got invited to the set of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I say, having spent years running an entertainment website, I can tell you that when a publicist texts, emails, or calls after hours, it means something is wrong. You've misquoted a client in an article. You've published a scoop that wasn't supposed to go live. One of your writers tweeted something inappropriate, the usual communication breakdowns. As the managing director of CinemaBlend, I've received my fair share of those messages from trusted studio contacts, more than I'd probably care to admit. Never, though, had I received an email like the one that arrived in my inbox on Thursday, June 9th, 2016 at 9:02 p.m. This is not in the book, but I can tell you guys that I was standing on my back porch when this happened, and my stomach dropped, because if you get an email at 9:02, it means something major has happened. Back to the book. They say, quote unquote, "Are you around for a fast call? If so, best number," inquired this publicist, whose name I will choose to protect. My stomach twisted like a pretzel. What was so urgent that it couldn't wait? Like I said, late evening requests like this usually led to being chewed out over the phone because someone somewhere was upset about something. This wasn't the case. The publicist was checking my availability for a set visit that was going to happen just a few days later in London to watch Zack Snyder film Justice League. Oh, that's all? The invitation to see Snyder work on one of the most anticipated superhero blockbusters in history wasn't the only bombshell. There was a delicious caveat. There was no embargo on press coverage, meaning that we could start publishing stories the day that we returned from the set. I can't emphasize this enough. This never happens, ever. Traditionally, when one attends a studio-sanctioned set visit, the knowledge obtained is kept under lock and key by airtight embargoes, and editors can only publish details of what they learned when the inviting studio decides they want to get the information out. We absorb significant plot details on set visits because we visit while the movies are early in production. But for Justice League, we were told, in complete contrast to the way that things normally are done, that we could start sharing details immediately. In fact, we were all begged to run our stories from the set as soon as was physically possible. The reasoning behind the decision was crystal clear. By June 9th, 2016, when the fateful set visit invitation had arrived, the verdict on Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice was in. The film had crossed $339 million domestically, but was days away from concluding its theatrical run. The website Box Office Mojo has its final days in theaters as June 16th, but the hard truth had sunk in that the movie was going to fall short of $1 billion worldwide, and the ramifications had the potential to be enormous and disastrous. In a blog post published on January 10th, 2019, years after the dust had settled on Zack Snyder's contributions to the DCEU, Drew McWeeny, formerly of HitFix and current publisher of the formerly Dangerous newsletter, reminisced about the hand-wringing that reportedly was going on at Warner Brothers between the release of Batman vs. Superman and the start of production of Justice League. According to his sources, there was an apprehensive mood at Warner Brothers in the wake of BVS because the Snyders already were deeply embedded in the DCEU as a director and as executive producers on multiple upcoming titles. Quote, when I was hearing bad things about Batman vs. Superman, it was from every direction, and it kept getting louder, McWeeny recalled in his blog post. Quote, one day, one of those conversations was with a person working directly for Team Snyder, and that person vented some very real anxiety about what might happen if the film didn't work. They explained just how deeply embedded the Snyders were at that point in the future of the DC films' big plan, and how much it would throw a wrench in things if they couldn't make a crossover film between their two biggest characters into a hit, and how much stress there was on figuring out the interconnected franchise somehow. The thing that they said that stood out most was how they were already far enough down the road on Justice League that it was happening no matter what, McWeeny continued. But the fear was that a stumble on Batman vs. Superman would start a domino effect that would screw up all the other plans, including the films that were connected to Justice League, end quote. None of this could be considered a shock to anyone who'd been paying attention to the situation that was slowly unfolding in the DCEU. Zack Snyder's Justice League train left the station long before Batman vs. Superman opened in theaters, with screenwriter Chris Terrio reportedly completing his version of the script as early as July 2015. The Snyders also admitted to feeling that pressure in the wake of Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice because they too understood its role as a foundation for the DC movies that had been announced. Quote, Batman vs. Superman was always a stepping stone for Justice League, and it was a way to bring the worlds together without being too jarring, Zack Snyder told The Hollywood Reporter in a March 17, 2016 profile. Our philosophy, though, is that it's filmmaker-driven. To understand that there is a bigger storyline, and let's all support that and not blow up the entire universe because you have an idea that you think is awesome but doesn't make sense with the bigger thing, end quote. Great point. Ironic when you consider what happened to Snyder and other directors in the Warner Brother DC system, but a great point nonetheless. There were multiple branches stemming off of the tree that was planted by the Snyders in both Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. The burgeoning DCEU needed to support announced movies such as Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman. Also, when Justice League was first announced by Warner Brothers in 2014, it was conceived as a two-part epic. And yet, if audiences rejected the foundation established by the Snyders, the entire house would crumble. The studio needed more buy-in. From my perspective, they had processed the less than stellar performance of Batman vs. Superman at the international box office, and they surmised that the majority of audience members paying to see superhero blockbusters in theaters preferred the jokey, mainstream approach of the MCU over the bold, aggressive tone of Snyder's DC movies to date. This led to a major shakeup behind the scenes at Warner Brothers that many point to as the beginning of the end for Zack Snyder's role in the DCEU. And I will stop there.
Wow.
Bravo. Sean, can you
That's
do me a
something,
favor?
you know.
Yes, sir.
Sean, can you do me a solid? Pat yourself on the back real quick. Well done. Well done. Bravo. Bravo. Beautifully written. Beautifully written.
That's the beginning of the chapter. We haven't even got to London yet. That chapter takes you all to London to the set of Justice League in 2016.
Right.
Beautifully written. You genuinely have my curiosity.
Now, at that point when that was happening, were Jeff Johns and John Berg on board yet, or was that, I think, in the middle of happening?
No, very much on board, because I have quotes from Zach from that set visit about how well he and Jeff Johns are working together.
Okay.
And
wow,
maybe it's spin, from his perspective at that time. Maybe when we were on the set, that's the narrative he was trying to put forward, but that's what he told us. He and Zach told us on that set that he and Jeff Johns had a great working relationship, and he was able to rely on Jeff's knowledge of the comics to make the films better. And who knows how much more water went under the bridge at that point, but that's what.
And I've always been very confused by that, because the whole Jeff Johns thing, like when Ray Fisher came out about Joss Whedon, but Jeff Johns was also being accused of being similar. I was very confused by that, because I would think nothing of the best from Jeff, because he's been working with DC for such a long time. He's so knowledgeable on the source material. So that really threw me for a loop when I heard all those things about him.
It's really difficult, because in no way do I want to diminish, the claims that Ray has brought up. It's he knows that something has happened, and he's standing by that. But all I could do is go on the reporting that I have heard about, from Zach and from other people, and so I'm not sure. We'll see what happens with Jeff Johns down the line, I guess.
Yeah, and
that's right.
Just to clear that up. Now, did you write this as a non-bias? I mean, it sounds like it, right? From the portion that I've seen, that I saw today, and then from reading what you or hearing what you just read. Now, this is all from a neutral standpoint, or is this you speaking?
The entire book is written from a neutral standpoint.
Okay, and I think that's important.
It is as much as it can be. And in fact, one of the critiques I got from a close friend of mine was there's not a lot of you in this book.
Right.
It's a lot of the fans, and it's a lot of stuff that I reported. And I think that was partially just because this was my first time through writing a book. And so much of the stuff that I write for CinemaBlend is just straight reporting. We'll occasionally branch off and do columns that are opinion driven. But I didn't want a book to be driven by my take on stuff.
Yeah.
I'm working currently right now on a Spider-Man book, and it's a lot more of my passion for the character, and it's a lot more of how his influence has been important to me, while also trying to convey his importance to several other people in the Spider-Man fan base.
That's right.
Even when I put a couple of sample chapters together, and they included a lot of feedback from Spider-Man fans, and my agent read it, and he was like, "Don't write the same book twice. Don't try to write a SnyderCut book about Spider-Man." And I took those words to heart. Like, he was right. I was trying to rely too heavily on other people's narratives. He was like, "Tell me why you think the character is important." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. Like, that's the story. I'm going to tell that story next." So that's where I'm heading in that direction. But this one, without putting too much conscious thought into it, this one was never going to be me telling, my story with regards to it. It was always trying to convey the story. Yeah. And in conveying the story, I always had to rely on other people's takes on it.
Right. And that's what I wanted to make clear for
pompous. Don't I sound so pompous?
No.
You're listening too much to people on Twitter.
Gross.
Well, no, that's why I bring it up, right? I want most people to understand that Sean does this for a living, right? He reports on things. So what he's doing here is he's doing not the same thing, but in like a longer form version, right? Telling the story from a neutral standpoint, whether or not his views are one way or the other.
Right.
I guess they really don't make a difference, right? What he thinks, he could hate this person or that movie, but he's doing it purely at a neutral standpoint. So
because what I wanted, like, I truly believe that what got accomplished here is unprecedented. I mean, I throw that word around a couple of different times, but it really has all the meaning in the world. Like, I've never seen anything like this before. So more than anything, I just wanted to properly document it. You know, like, I wanted to make sure that I was so concerned about just getting all of the beats of the story correct. That, you know, when people come at me now about like my take on Zach or none of that was important when I was writing this.
Right.
So
that's true.
Right.
And that's something I didn't take into consideration at first, is that you being a reporter and you've been doing this for so long makes you the perfect candidate for writing a story such as this, because you can put your feelings aside and just tell the story. Right. And then you also have those inside kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Inside views, right? Because you've been on sets and you've spoken to people like this, and you've spoken to people behind the scenes of the movie. So I think you're the best choice for writing this book.
And honestly, I'm legitimately just at a stage. Thank you so much for saying that, Justice. Like, that's very nice to hear, and I appreciate that. But honestly, like, the only thing I'm concerned about now at this point is that for the people in the movement who truly, you know, that this is so important to everybody, and I understand it's important to you. I hope that it lives up to what I want you guys to be able to point at the book down the line and say, yeah, this book captures what we went through. You know, this book is the snapshot of this past 3.5 year journey that we went on. So
yeah,
we shall see.
We shall see.
You the how long did it take you from start to finish? To I don't want to say complete it, because I don't think an author's ever done. But how long did it take you from when you started and you got the green light to when you wrapped on the book? And like, so where does the story end?
2 years.
2 years?
2 years roughly. From the time that you start taking notes and the time that you start scratching an outline together. You guys got to remember that it took me 4 to 6 months to sell it. You know, 4 to 6 months to convince the publisher to go with it.
Yeah.
So you're going door to door, you know, to publishers virtually, you know, via email, and trying to convince them that this is a story worth telling. Yeah. And what I was told often by a lot of different people who had like passing knowledge of what was going on was that this is a really great magazine cover story.
Yeah.
I can see this being a Rolling Stone cover or a Vanity Fair cover or something like that. But I'm not sure there's enough meat there for a book. And I always believed that there was enough there because I knew the amount of people in the movement, but the challenge was always going to be getting to them and getting them to willingly share their stories because, as you guys probably know, the SnyderCut movement is nothing if not untrustworthy of new people coming in. And you have an uphill climb to get them to even trust. Like, that's why I laugh my ass off at the idea that I'm manipulating these people, because it took me months to convince them to even talk.
Yeah.
So, you know, the fact that I'm pulling some magic, some like ruse on the movement is hilarious to me.
So is there a lot of, I guess you could say, unnamed sources in your book because they said, look, this is what really happened, but I don't want my name used? Is there a lot of that?
No. No. I avoided most of that stuff.
Okay.
Because if I couldn't trust it wholeheartedly, if I couldn't verify it up and down, and this is the journalist in me, if I couldn't verify it up and down, I wasn't going to include it.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people
who great policy.
Like, how much of the negativity do you get into? How much of the infighting? Like, so much of that stuff is done by people on social media that hide behind fake names. Like, how am I gonna report on that?
Yeah.
You know, and even like, listen, you could tell the sordid behind the scenes story of this, and maybe one day someone will write that book. But if I couldn't get to the actual people to hear that, I wasn't going to put it in a book. You know,
Yeah.
this is a book. This is something that's going to have to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a tweet.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that you were told there's not enough meat to the story.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the excerpt I think you released a couple of days ago where Zach is talking to Warner Brothers and they're like, this movie is trending. They're like, yeah, it's just a little bit of fans. He's like, but it's trending more than any other movie we've ever made.
I know.
How could he? And again, I see a little bit of a parallel there, like you're being told, oh, because I always say that it'll be kind of funny in hindsight that this whole story might be more possibly popular than the movie itself, which is going to be popular because there was so much that's happening and we're still learning things.
Yeah.
Was there at any point, Sean, where you were like, you know what, I think I might need to push this book back because more stuff is happening? Or were you like, no, I'm going to get this out now?
No, that's a great question because you're right. Like trying to come up with an organic ending to it was very challenging. And a lot of people would say like, but you're going to wait till you see the movie before you finish the book, right? And I was like, no, because I'm not going to see the movie until it comes out kind of thing. So I thought legitimately I'm going to have to land this plane. You know, I'm going to have to come up with some type of ending. So I still loved the idea of the messages from the fans because I still thought that really had an impact, an emotional impact that really tied the thread of here are the people who fought, you know, tooth and nail to get this done. And here are their messages. And then, of course, getting the cut released was ideal. You know, that was a great ending to it. And to the point where, and I'll tell you guys this up front, like I've been scratching out notes, you know, for a follow-up book where it would cover everything that kind of happened from the announcement of the cut throughout. And some of it is I'm waiting to see how all of this develops, to see if there is a restoration of the Snyderverse.
Well, that could be the name of the book, Restore the Snyder Cut.
Restore the Snyderverse.
You never know.
However, at the same time, guys, we're just exhausted by all these people.
Yeah.
Like right now, they've really beaten me down. And you know, like all I wanted to do was tell this story, and to get confronted on a day-to-day basis of just like we don't need to hear you telling it, kind of makes me feel like, all right, cool.
Right.
You guys take it from here then. You know, like I did my part.
And they're the minority because I think the book is like selling out pretty quick, even though it's just pre-order. You know, I mean, people want to hear this story. You know, and the reason we need objective journalism and everything, but especially when it comes to this, there's so many people you talk to have heard something on the internet. Well, I heard this is what really happened. Yeah. And then when you do your own research, you're like, wait, where did they get that from? You know, they just
it's at that point. It's at that point now. If I wanted to go back, like I know the story, right? But like in you know specific kind of short details, right? So if I wanted to go back and what actually happened, I wouldn't be able to do that, not without you writing this book, right? Because as of right now, to my knowledge, you're the only one who has put this entire story into one convenient, for lack of a better word, package, right? Sure. So it's by no way, shape, or form, like this is a good thing. Because again, if I wanted to hear this story, I would have to go like look for it myself. And a lot of it was through, you know, social media and you know, behind the scenes kind of stuff. So I wouldn't even be able to get a lot and opinions. So I wouldn't even be able to get a lot of this information, not without your book. Always keep that in mind.
Thank you.
And I plan to share this book with everyone because God knows I have tried to explain this to my parents like 500 times. Yeah. And then I show my dad the trailer. My dad's like, oh, okay. So is Robert Downey Jr. going to be in this one too? And I'm like, that actually happened. And I explained to him the whole thing. And he asked me about Robert Downey going to be in this movie. And I'm like, oh.
I'll tell you too, like, that was honestly one of the hardest lines to walk, of making the book interesting to people who know every step of it. And still making it accessible to people who are just like, what the heck? Like, I've heard about this Snyder Cut, but what is it kind of thing? So,
And it's hard for me to explain because people are like, oh, it's like a director's kind of like, no. You know, like they're like, oh, yeah, like Blade Runner or, you know, Aliens, a director's cut. It's the same movie. And you even see that in the comments. And I'm like, no, it's a complete, you know. And then you try to, then you almost can't explain it that it's a different movie without going into all of it. And at that point, people are so confused. I'm like, I'm going to start handing out copies of this book to people. I'm like, here, read this.
Thank you.
That's why it's important that the story be told the way Sean is telling it, is because, and you know, we're working on something on our own, like for our own purposes. to do something in our own form, not as extensive as what you did. But the way we felt is, I think the way you felt is that you need to be able to distinguish the 2017 film with what this is, because your general audience, they're going to look at it. And I think that's the problem the Snyder Cut's going to face as far as numbers go. It's, well, why is this different than the one that I saw then? Why is that different, right? The story does need to be told to bridge that gap. Or your general audiences who got turned off so hard by 2017 Justice League.
Yeah, you're right.
They're not going to want to see a second version.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I think
that's a great point. And I'm worried about that. Well, worried is the wrong word, because I quite frankly, I don't fall under fan base, but I think you're 100% on point with that numbers wise, because not only does the general audience not understand why they're different, but even if so, they don't understand that they're different, and they're like, oh, but I am curious. Let me check it out. Oh, it's 4.5 hours long. Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna go watch something else, And I think that, and that's why I was I was definitely on board with the whole make it episodic idea for that specific reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did think that was going to be good for making conversation.
Yes.
For sustaining talk from a week to week basis. And even if you get like 2 episodes into it, I'll use like WandaVision as an example. Mm-hmm. There are people who now 4 episodes in who were unsure about what to think of it. And they hear that, oh, it's really good. Okay, I'll go back and sort of catch up with who everybody is. Yeah. Say you get like 2 episodes into this 4-hour cut of Justice League, and you're like, oh, damn, it's great. It's so much better than you thought it was going to be, and check it out. People will be like, all right, cool, I'll catch up with the first 2 and then ride it out for the rest of it. But
right. And
yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, I have a 2-parter. From what we've been seeing Zach post, everything from the 3 release date posters, the Fabian Wagner intro picture, and then there was one today as well. Are you liking what you're seeing? And then the second part is, would you have read? Like, I think you just answered it, but do you think this was always supposed to be a film, and maybe the episodic thing was a way that Zach pitched it only, or do you think there was something else? Do you think it really did go from episodic to a movie?
I think it was always a movie. I think that HBO Max probably wanted it to be episodic for all the reasons we just talked about. It makes more sense for them to generate awareness, to create buzz, to create media coverage. But I think Zach always envisioned it as a film. And it would have been weird, I think, because it wouldn't have opened and closed the way that a traditional episode would have. I think it would have been a full 4-hour movie that just broke, at these 4-hour marks kind of thing. Because he didn't have the opportunity to go back and film, transitions, essentially, at that point. Maybe if we weren't in COVID, he would have had the chance to do that. But he wouldn't have been able to necessarily go back and correct that. But I'm sure all of that was just negotiations going on at the time, from the time that HBO Max said, okay, let's run it. Then it became a conversation of what format are we going to do it in. And I'm sure that there was a lot of back and forth about how they were going to do it. And they ended up on the 4-hour cut. The thing is, I think that Zach was always going to be doing it in multiple ways anyway. I think if he gets the opportunity to bring it around to theaters, he would have had a 4-hour version ready to air or ready to screen in theaters and IMAX in the ways that he wants to do it. We're in a weird situation with theaters and COVID right now where it's not safe to do it everywhere. HBO Max does have the situation where they're not available in every international market. Zach's fan base is completely global. So theaters are not available to him everywhere. I also think by the end of the year, he's going to have multiple home version, box sets and collectible editions. And, they're going to market the hell out of this, because why wouldn't they? This is something they've been waiting to do for 3 years now at this point. So there's always going to be a lot of different formats. You're going to be able to appreciate the Snyder Cut in several different ways. But that first initial blast, and listen, it's a nightmare from us, from a site perspective. It's always so much easier to cover something that's episodic, because you know exactly where everybody is in the story. We're going to have to just assault coverage
Yeah.
of a 4-hour cut of Justice League. You know, that's going to be like an 8-course meal. Essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Where do you begin? You know,
Yeah.
And
I'm already nervous thinking about how to even cover it. So
I truly though, you're not wrong in being a little bit nervous. I can definitely assure you of that. Like, on one hand, I'm like, I kind of hope I just said kind of twice, but that's okay. I kind of hope they do it like Wonder Woman, where they release it at like 12 noon.
yeah,
But then again, like the other part of me is like 7 p.m. wouldn't be so bad, right? Because like we could all wake up that day, get ready, do like a pre-show stream or something, like just from a perspective of what we do. I think there's a lot of. Do you think the lack of advertising is an issue?
I mean, I did think for a while, yes. And I know that streaming is different. They try to advertise it much closer to when it drops.
Yeah.
Right.
If I were them and I had this movie this forbidden movie that people have been fighting for years for, I'd be advertising it every single day.
Yeah, me too.
I would be doing some sort of campaign to educate casual audiences to let them know this isn't the same movie. You know, I don't know the thought process that's going into that. It depends what their end result is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be driving up subscribers? Is it supposed to be just the hardest bit with things that hit streaming is that they spike and then they fall off.
Right.
And, you know, something that is episodic can maintain that momentum, whether it's The Mandalorian, whether it's WandaVision now. I think about Cobra Kai is something where the entire season drops.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about it for a couple of days, and then it fades out of the consciousness. Like, is that SnyderCut?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I think Zach's fan base is going to talk about it nonstop.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
But I do not know if the general audience is going to do that.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? Because like everyone's complaining about the 4 hours. If there was ever a period in human history where people have done nothing but watch movies all day long, it's been during COVID. And you mentioned Cobra Kai. I think I finished 2/3 of the season in one sitting. You know, and I'm like, that was more than 4 hours. But you don't, I guess because it's episodic, you don't notice it. But, you know, people are so well trained now, especially in this last year, being at home all the time, just watch movies endlessly. So I think that when it comes out, it won't be as, I have a feeling people will just be used to it. Oh, it's a 4 hour movie. Okay, well, if I want after 2 hours, I can stop it and it'll pick up later. But I feel like it won't be as bad as we think it will be. Like for general audiences, they're like, oh, there's 2 hours left. I'll watch it tomorrow. It's Friday.
But we talked to Pete Docter, who's the director of Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, his movie went to Disney Plus on Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was lamenting in honest conversation that, like, this is the first Pixar movie that's not getting a theatrical release. And he said, in his mind, he was like, I just envision people starting it on their iPad while they're cooking dinner, you know, and they're kind of like half paying attention to it. And he's like, that's a nightmare for me as a filmmaker, you know, like, I want your undivided attention. And, you know, Zach, his ideal situation is you in a theater, you know, in a blackened theater with no distractions to watch a 4 hour cut of it. And while we will all be, you know, rabidly, like, I even think about, like, I've been having this own thought process in my own head of like, I can't start watching it in the morning because my living room gets flooded with light, you know, like natural light, and I can't see the screen properly. Like, I'm going to want to wait till the evening, you know, when it's dark enough for me to appreciate everything, because I don't want to be squinting at the screen. I'm like, where? Oh, where? I'm trying to close my blinds. I'm trying to do all this stuff. Like, I don't want to do that.
Especially with a Zach film, because there's so much detail and so many things you're going to have to catch and do. But Sean, I as always, as you know, every single time I get to talk to you, I truly feel grateful. Is there anything? Because I know you have to go. By the way, congratulations on your son. You know, looking at colleges, that's a big step in life. Yeah, it's truly. I don't know what that feels like, but I remember when I went to college and how my parents, you know, didn't care. So I hope everything's.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying not to cry.
He's gonna think, dude, my dad is so cool. Like, he's on it.
Oh
My
my
dad
God.
isn't into this stuff.
Quite the opposite.
Oh,
Quite
really?
the opposite. He thought it was
So-
funny because he went into his journalism class. He takes journalism in high school, and he went in the other day and like somebody was pulling up a YouTube video that CinemaBlend posted, and was like, "Look, CinemaBlend just posted this," and he was like, "That's just weird." Like the funny thing about all this is like my boys are sports fanatics, and they don't really care as much about movies. Like movies are dad's thing. And they knew I was working on a book, and they know the Snyder Cut, and they actually make fun of me all the time. They're always like Snyder Cut, in a very playful way. And I always remember when the May 20th announcement happened, and my teenager came out of his room and he said, "Why is the Snyder Cut trending on social media?" It's like,
right.
because your father is telling a story about something that people really care about. And then he was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Good for you."
Oh, yeah.
They don't know. They have no interest.
So maybe a couple months after the Snyder Cut does debut and the book comes out, in the future we can talk and set something up again, or wait a little bit longer. We always love having you.
I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I appreciate you guys having me anytime, honestly.
It's truly, and after the Snyder Cut, maybe we can bring you on to talk some Marvel, because we're not just one-sided here, right?
Yeah.
And I know that you're a huge fan, so we'll try to switch gears next time. If you'd like, maybe you can let everyone know what's going on, where your book's going to be at, how they can get it besides the link.
Absolutely. It drops May 1st. It's up for pre-order right now. You can get it anywhere that you feel comfortable getting books. I do send people to Amazon, but it's at Books A Million, Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Book Depository is a great site that ships internationally if you're watching this from someplace else. There's another great website called bookshop.org that supports local independent bookstores. So if you put your zip code into bookshop.org, it'll tell you a local place that is going to be carrying the book.
Awesome.
Yes, the pre-order is running out in a lot of markets, which is a tremendous problem to have. But from what I understand, on March 1st, when it drops, it will be stocked and available everywhere. And there is an ebook version that you can get as well too. So COVID has kind of been messing up some of the distribution chains in terms of getting the book out to different places, but I know a lot of people are still getting it March 1st. It might come a couple of days later for some other people.
Right.
The ebook, of course, is available on March 1st. That'll get delivered to whatever your device is. And I want to be able to make this announcement, but it's not finalized yet. But I heard today that the contracts are going through with an audiobook from somebody who is very important to the Snyder Cut movement.
Oh boy.
And may be a familiar voice that you guys would recognize who might be doing the audiobook. And I still can't announce that yet, but it's
And we have a similar situation to you, so I kind of hope it's the same person.
Yeah, that's what I thought Ty, when I heard it. I'm like, man.
Yeah, I kind of hope it's the same person.
I kind of saw him swinging a big weapon before.
Oh,
It might be then.
yeah, it might be the
might
same
be that
person.
That person has told me that they would like to do it, and my company that's doing the audiobook works with him as a client, and the negotiations were underway. And today I heard that it was going to contract, but one of those, it's not happening till it's happening. So,
Yep, of course, naturally. Sean, I'm going to unmute Justice because I've muted him because his mic's making some weird noises. I just want him to be able to say bye.
Thanks for calling me out on that one. I don't know what the problem is, but Sean, we appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming around. That was a quick dip if I've ever seen one. And please come back. I would love to talk some Spider-Man with you.
oh, dude, anytime. You guys are amazing. Jack, pleasure meeting you as well, too.
Godspeed. Good luck with the book. I know I'll be buying it and making sure
We
everyone
all
in my
will.
family buys it.
Yeah,
Make sure
we
my
all-
sister, everyone.
Thank you, boys. We'll talk
Godspeed,
soon.
man.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Good
And
show.
Sean, again, final message. Just hold your head up high because you've done well, and you've done well for every single person that's put their heart into this movement. So try not to focus on that stuff.
Guys, be kind to everybody. Just
Of
be kind to
course.
each other. Not you guys. People who are listening. Be kind. We're all in this same thing together. We all have the same common goal. This is our victory lap. enjoy it.
Yes,
Exactly.
That's right.
Amen.
All right,
That's
later,
right.
boys.
Later.
That's right. Have a good one, Sean. Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Beautiful interview, fellas.
After watching that, how can you like say like these haters who have been saying like, oh, what was it they're saying, manipulating? You could tell the guy's emotional about it. He's put his heart into it. He's trying to tell this story, and that's beautiful. That was a great interview. Yeah. Wow.
That's right. Another great interview from your boys over here at the Pop Culture Corner. Now, like I said, if I've ever seen a quick dip, that's a quick dip, baby. You already know how we do around here, guys. You can find us on the podcast. What?
I was gonna say don't outro like completely. Go halfway. Just the tip. Just the tip.
Oh God, I wish you didn't say that to me.
Stick around if you're listening. Stick around if you're listening. Justice just has to get through this thing, but then we have something to talk to you guys about as well.
Oh, booyah. Big surprise for y'all. So I just wanted to, reiterate, find us our podcast on all platforms that podcasts can be heard. That includes Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it. We're on it, baby. We're working on some more specific YouTube content, so keep your eyes out for that one. We have articles up on popculturecorner.wordpress.com. We're also working on fixing that. Don't worry. We'll get that out the way soon. You can find us every week. We do quick dips. We do podcasts. We do random little broadcasts. We do it all for you. We do it for you. We do it for the culture.
Yeah. And then I'm just going to play. I can officially play this. And then Jack's going to tell you a little bit about what's going on.
Booyah.
Woo!
I realize the date is wrong because it was March 26th originally.
Yeah.
But
yeah, folks, this is something we've been working on. If you guys remember, on Christmas Day, we were the only podcast that was doing our pre-show and post-show live from an actual cinema. And we want to thank Showcase Cinemas for letting us do that. You guys made that show such a success that Showcase has agreed to continue to move forward. So right now, what we as nerds got to do, we got to bind together and we got to make sure we support our local theaters on March 31st. Is that correct?
Yes, March 31st, not the 26th. That was my fault.
Yeah, Godzilla vs. Kong will be hitting your local theaters. And just like on Christmas Day with Wonder Woman 1984, Pop Culture Corner will be there live. We'll be doing a pre-show and a post-show from the theater. We want to thank Showcase. And we'll be doing it, I believe, from their location in Dedham, where they have a very cool, what is it, the X Plus?
They have their X Plus there. So they're and if anyone's been to IMAX before, it's a little, in my mind, it's a little bit better than IMAX because they do have the freedom to upgrade consistently and constantly. They're not bound by like limitations like IMAX is. So their X Plus in Lowell is 4K, and there's several channels of audio. But in Dedham, they have it upgraded to laser 4K. There's 30 channels of audio or something like that. The seats vibrate to accompany you for see, hear, feel the movie. So this one, I'm kind of tagging it right now as bigger, better, and louder than Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, yeah.
So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. It's going to be such a fun time. And even if you're watching it, whatever way you're watching it, you could still join us. You join us for the pre-show, watch the film in theaters, and then come join us for the post-show when we'll be talking about, spoilers or just having fun talking about giant monsters punching each other in the head.
Yeah.
This is going to be really fun. I can already feel it.
I can feel it too. And look, this is going to be a big movie. I mean, literally, It's going to be a big movie. It's meant to be watched on the big screen. This is not something you want to watch on your iPhone. You got two larger-than-life characters coming together for the first time in decades, and showcases the X Plus. You said the seats vibrate and stuff like that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And if you're young, you're healthy. They are taking so many precautions. In fact, throughout the month, I think we're going to play snippets of our interview with Mark Malinkowski. He told us about all the things they're doing. They put in special air filters that recycle the air. So if you're worried, okay, someone might have coughed, maybe. Stuff like that. They're taking very good when you guys were there, they're wiping down seats between every show.
It was
Everyone is
unreal.
socially distanced. So if you, let's say, have a group of 4 or 5 people and you buy your tickets online, they will socially distance you. They'll put it in a way where you're not close to anyone else, and you can still enjoy your popcorn and your stuff. They have all these measures they're taking so that you go to the movies, you enjoy yourself, you don't have to be worried. Everything is neat and clean. These guys were there. They can tell you more about it than I could.
We'll do that in the coming
Weeks. But
in the coming weeks.
Get excited. Get excited.
Just know this. You shouldn't have to worry when you go see a movie.
Yeah.
The only thing that you should be focusing on is the film.
Yeah.
Showcase has made it so you can do that. They have taken the worry out of the situation for you by worrying about you for themselves, right? They've thought about it like, what would I want out of a theater? And they've implemented and spent tons of money on making sure that you don't have to worry about contracting anything while in their establishments. Statistics show that movie theaters are not super spreaders. So if you are healthy and if you don't have underlying problems or pre-existing conditions and you can get out and support your local theater, we definitely highly advise it. And we are super excited. And I just want to thank Showcase for believing in us. And you know, we'll make you proud.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Also, guess what? So our store officially went live today. And if you are, so we're running a deal right now. It's a month-long promotion. If you use promo code, I forget the promo code. Isn't that hilarious? I'll give everyone the promo code in 1 second. Just give me a moment. But we're running a 15% discount for this whole month as a thank you to everyone who supported us and done their part. And then if you are a patron of the show, you will always have your own personal 10% coupon. Shipping handling still applies, and you can't combine. So whatever one benefits you more, obviously go with that. I'm super excited to, debut some designs, and we're going to keep rolling stuff out as the months and weeks come. So the link is in the description, and I will put the code in the description as well. So anything else, become a patron of the show so you can possibly get an all year round 10% discount.
That music.
Yeah, and I saw that Nikki said that's a mouthful. That isn't the promo code, butthead. I forgot the promo code. Isn't that hilarious? That's not the promo code. I can't remember. I made 3 different codes because I had to make the Patreon ones and then I had to make the 15% off one. So I kind of just forgot. That's on me. But I'll put it in the description as well. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so I really advise that you take advantage of the Pop Culture Corner exclusive Patreon membership while you can, and get involved. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming and commenting and having a good time with us. Just remember, this is just episode 1 of our month-long February guest spot. We have so much more in store for you. So if someone else would like to take us out, someone else take us out.
That's right. All right. That's right. All right, guys. So you guys make sure you stay tuned. Like Drizzle just said, we got a big month coming ahead of you. We got a bunch of guests, a bunch of we're switching things up. We got some different kind of guests, and we're doing some music this time around. We're doing all kinds of stuff, right? Make sure you check out Tyler's mother's GoFundMe. On a more serious note, guys, she does have breast cancer, and it's stage 4 at this point. Now, we all understand how medical bills are and how expensive they can be, and how tragic times like this can be on the family and the victim themselves. So please, if you have an extra $1, or even if you don't, just share the message. Do what you can do. We appreciate you. Never forget, everything we do is for you and for the culture. Now, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Google+, WhatsApp, all of that. We put out new content every week on a regular, every week, Wednesdays, Saturdays, and then sometimes, excuse me, Mondays, the podcast will come out. Wednesdays is Quick Dip. And then sometimes we just record random little things that maybe something happens during the week. We'll record something, we'll put it up. So that way we're always flooding your inbox, right? So you can always see us. Am I missing something? Oh, become a patron, please, and thank you.
Yeah,
We already did that. But,
did I do the patron
official.
thing?
No, I did
It
it.
never hurts to hear it twice.
I did it, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
never hurts to
official,
hear it
but
twice.
we may, me and Ty and Justice are talking about this. We're probably going to have a sponsor for our March 18th event for the Zack Snyder's Justice League. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be an exciting day also.
Look
We'll
at
be
that.
here
Yeah.
early in the morning.
With the outro. We got so much going on, guys, that Big Drip can't even keep track. And he'd be
Yep.
forgetting
Yeah.
things in the outro. So you guys make sure you stay tuned just in case I forgot something. You might get a little surprise. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.